everyone, InfiniteCaz here, and welcome to another video. Today, I'll be trying to figure out if ink mines are the worst sob in Splatoon 2. As you probably know, each weapon in the game comes with a sob and special weapon to aid your gameplay, and some are better than others. But what is the weakest of them all? I often hear people say ink mines are the worst sob in the game, so I thought it would be a good idea to take a look at them and see how they compare to the rest of the lineup. With that being said, let's get right into it. Ink mines are very simple to use, so first, let's go over some basic stats, and what ink mines actually are. Pressing the R button on your controller will place an ink mine under your feet, provided you are standing on an inkable surface. Ink mines cost 60% of your tank to place, which is slightly lower than the 70% needed for the regular splat bomb. If you place a mine on uninked or enemy turf, a small patch of your ink will appear where the mine is. You can have 2 mines on the map at a time, but the second mine you place must be out of range of the first. And if you try to place a third mine, the first one you place explodes. Unlike Splatoon 1, mines do not have a time limit before they detonate, and don't explode if you die either. To set one off, the enemy must either be sufficiently close to one, or ink over it. A direct hit to an opponent deals 45 damage, while a splashed hit at a slightly longer range does 35. The mine also paints in a small radius around it, and tags the player who sets it off for 5 seconds, provided they are still alive. This works in the same fashion as the point sensor, and sob power-up will increase the tracking duration, along with the blast and trigger radius. Ink mines are not complicated at all. You place them, they blow up, and you place more of them down. So now that you know the basic facts about the sob, how would the average player use them? Because ink mines are a very passive sob, they are commonly used preemptively to catch flankers or overly aggressive opponents off guard. Heavier weapons like the Custom Hydra, Elite 4K and Dynamo Roller have ink mines, and placing them in common flank spots can help increase your awareness and deal with opponents who manage to sneak behind the lines unnoticed. Because ink mines tag the person they hit, it's a good tool in solo to make your team aware of a flanker. But even with voice chat, knowing the exact position of an aggressive player is very helpful. Being tagged makes the person vulnerable, and they often will back up now that their location is known, so mines act as a good deterrent. Because mines deal a small amount of damage, they can assist you in an engagement, especially if your weapon is usually not good at close quarter fighting. As someone who plays a lot of the Custom Hydra Splatling, a well-placed ink mine can come in clutch if someone runs over it while trying to jump me, as I need to hit fewer shots for the splat. Because of the Hydra's long rev time, the way ink mines are placed ahead of time actually benefits me, even if it does come with its limitations. I also find that ink mines work well in splat zones, to give that extra slither of defense if someone tries to paint that area. It's not super useful if someone is a good painter or is being aggressive on the zone, but that extra bit of paint can come in very clutch to stop the opponent capping. While not super effective, you can place ink mines at your feet if you need to quickly get away from a situation, which could pick off or deter your opponents from hunting you down further. If you are to play a weapon with mines, I would advise looking out for some spots before the match that you may want to place them, but this is nowhere near necessary. At the end of the day, ink mines are very simple to use. As long as you are placing mines in spots that will see use, it's almost impossible to go wrong. So why use ink mines? To be honest, I don't think the sob has that many advantages, but I'll talk about a few things that may be a positive. First, ink mines are not a very active sob, which means that you can place them down away from where you are at. For example, in Clan Blitz, ink mines can be placed near the basket while you head off to another part of the map. allowing you to focus on getting splats without having to check the basket for a sneak attack. Mines also do multiple things when they explode, which gives them a bit more versatility than other subs. They also cover a fairly large area, so if you place mines in a place where the enemy tends to cluster, you can hit more than one person with a single mine. But aside from these, I don't think there's much to talk about, sadly. So what are bad about ink mines? The most obvious disadvantage is the low damage they deal. In Splatoon 1, an ink mine was a deadly trap, but now 45 or 35 damage is easily brushed off if you are not in the middle of an engagement. Being tagged is annoying, but again situational. By far the biggest downside to ink mines is not necessarily a glaring weakness of the sub itself, but how it compares to other offerings. Most noticeably, you lack the pressure and range of bombs, as they can be thrown. Ink mines can't be placed on walls or non-inkable surfaces, which limits the places they can apply pressure to. This also means that they are no use when pushing up, as you place them right below where you stand, making them useful for only about half of the game. Also, ink mines will explode if they have been inked over, which happens the vast majority of the time. People usually paint over where they are heading, and while you will still see the explosion, allowing you to know if someone has just set the mine off, the opponent is usually far enough away that they are unaffected by the blast radius. The ink mine lacks versatility, and the utility that most other subs have to some extent. And to boot, not many weapons have this sub, and even fewer that can take proper advantage of it, which makes it undesirable. Sadly, when the weaker subs in Splatoon 2 are brought up, the common contenders for the bottom spots are the supportive ones, as they don't have much advantage in a 1v1 fight, and are less threatening overall. Ink mines are in a strange spot, and straddle the line between being supportive and more aggressive, as they deal damage but also tag the person who has came into contact with the mine. To simplify things, I'll be quickly comparing ink mines to the Sprinkler, Toxic Mist, Point Sensor and Squid Beacon, all of which I believe have arguments that they could be the worst sub-weapon. The Sprinkler is a passive sub that paints the area around it when placed, but gets less intense over time. Placing a sprinkler in a busy spot can provide a good deal of paint and a small amount of pressure, but overall it has no combat ability and isn't much use for most weapons it's on. Ink mines, in my opinion, provide more pressure as a passive sub, but obviously you trade that for the painting ability of a sprinkler. Toxic Mist is a non-damaging sub that creates an area which slows down opponents and slowly drains their ink tank. This is much more useful for one-on-one engagements, and it can provide pressure to a busy area, as people will try to avoid being in the mist as it makes them vulnerable. However, the sub is quite expensive and does no damage, so it fails to square up to the other subs such as bombs, which are much more useful in almost every situation. The sub does not paint and has no passive use, so I consider it to be pretty mediocre and one of the worst in the game. Squid beacons provide a jump point for two people without showing off their position, provided the beacon is still there. The sub has no active use, but when utilised properly it can be a very powerful tool, cutting down the time needed to get back into the action. However, as a beacons player, you rely on your teammates to actually use them, and being able to place them in useful spots. So how effective beacons are vary from game to game, which is a hit against the sub. That being said, I think they are more powerful in their use compared to ink mines, as squid beacons can really help turn the tides of a battle when used right. Point sensors have a decent sized ring when thrown that will tag anyone who walks into them for a period of time, making their exact location known to your teammates. They deal no damage, but can be useful to help target opponents and possibly stop them from advancing. However, they are pretty situational, and I don't think they provide much support. especially if you and your teammates have a way to communicate. So where do ink mines square up among these subs? I feel like they are definitely not the worst of the 5 here. I would say Sprinkler, Toxic Mist and Point Sensor are all weaker than ink mines. Mist and Point Sensor don't paint, and their ability is situational, while Sprinkler provides little pressure and doesn't paint well enough to make up for that. Of course, ranking the ink mine there isn't set in stone, and you may have a different opinion, but I feel like the advantages the ink mine has puts it a little above the very bottom of the ranking, especially if it's paired with a weapon like the Custom Hydra, where more traditional bombs would be of less use. To conclude, I don't think ink mines are a fantastic sub, but I would be hard pressed to say that they are the weakest in the game. Every sub can be effective if used correctly, and ink mines are no exception to that. In Splatoon 3, if they return, which I assume they will, I do hope they get buffed a wee bit, so they stack up better against the rest of the arsenal. That's all for now, and thank you so much for watching. What are your opinion on the ink mines? Do you think they are underrated or a pretty garbage sub? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe as it really helps me out, and I will see you all next time. Bye!